double jeopardy means in danger of being damaged or destroyed. I know it has another connotation, but I like to use it for this presentation. I'm also showing my qualifications because they were late achieved and very hard work. So my story is I was educated in 6 different schools in different countries, and so I always had a different house to go to and different people to meet. So I had an unusual background, and by the time I got to secondary school I was in the bottom set because I didn't have the basics in numeracy and literacy for some reason, and so school wasn't really academically of any interest. It wasn't the greatest school, and I was a really bad student actually. So I left early with 2 qualifications. I didn't really fit in, particularly in teenager years, because of the girl groups, the usual thing. I didn't quite get them, a bit tricky, still are. So health-wise, I had pains, growing pains, dislocations, and severe bloating. I was quite tall, but I looked, well, I still am tall, but I would look like a stick with a bump, and migraine, and sort of sugar rushes, things going on. I left school, I did a bit of artist stuff, and then I wandered around the world like a nomad for a few years. I think I actually was depressed then, looking back. Came back and got married and had children. I would summarise my life as surreal, especially in the first quarter, very passive, being taken along like a dream, and just everything is slightly strange, and you just want to be in the background, in the wallpaper, while things happen, because it's quite scary. So I was passive, but my first activism came with the birth of my eldest child. Medical milestones, developmental milestones, and a lot of medical issues, a lot of health issues, allergies, anaphylaxis, all sorts, not being able to eat very well. So I was told all sort of horrific things to make them conform, which I said no to, but it was difficult. In fact, I was actually told to watch EastEnders. That wasn't horrific. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I don't get why I was advised to do that at all. We kept being excluded from playgroups and things, and they were about to go to primary school, so I initiated a SEN, which is a statement of special educational needs, and that was really, you know, a sudden epiphany, because I had to initiate it and look up these different words and things that I hadn't been used to, the terminology. So that worked well, and I actually realised it's not that difficult doing all these things. I spent a lot of time in school because they couldn't teach my child, and they didn't know what to do back in those days. So my eldest is now 28, and it was very difficult, and I wasn't getting the support I needed from EPs either, educational psychologists. So I decided I had to be one and make a difference and help them teach other children better too. So despite really no qualifications, I walked into the local Open University hub and asked to do a psychology degree, because I decided that's what I needed, and they let me do it. So that was great social mobility, and I got through it. It was a bit tricky without a computer at first, because I can't do handwriting very well. I know I'm a teacher. And I won awards and became a speaker for them, actually. And the reason I've got the night owl now is because my eldest son did not sleep at all for the first 4 years, the usual night terrors. And so I would study at night, I still do, kind of not study, but stay up. And then I had to do some part-time work as well. My aim was to be an EP, so to do that you had to have a teaching degree then, which I did at Brighton University. I also had to do my GCSE maths, which was great fun. And then I became a specialist SEND teacher. Unfortunately, my health had really deteriorated, both knee ops and quite significant damage. And I was told I'd be okay in 2 weeks. And because I was quite literal, I believed them even though I wasn't. So I went back to work too early and caused more ligament damage and more other damage to my joints and probably the rest of my body too. I applied for the DED psych, which had changed then from the normal route, and I did actually get offered a place, so I had to decline it because of my health. I just couldn't cope. I was extremely tired and I was working full time. I found it really hard to articulate to the doctors what was going on in my joints, because I would go there for one joint, but I'd expect them to already know about that one. Maybe theory of mind, I'm not sure. But sometimes they just didn't, or they'd say something about one area and not realising that it would have an effect on the other, really detrimental. So it was very tricky for me to describe what was happening. And after my specialist training, I went into a special school, and then I went as an advisory teacher with the County Council for Autism, which I really enjoyed. Unfortunately, in 2010 we had the 38% frontline cuts, and there was a consultancy process which I didn't quite understand, and so that was quite hard for me. I really found that detrimental to my health for some time, but decided I had to carry on, and I did. Luckily, I'd made links with the Autism Education Trust, and then became lead for the largest national autism organisation in the UK, and travelled a lot. I kept getting more and more pains. When I say pains, they didn't believe me, but I mean, I had prolapsed discs. Luckily, some of the time I could work from home, even prone, sideways, for a long time. I shouldn't have done. I should have taken sick leave, but I was told I wasn't ill. I was told it wasn't possible to do that, so I didn't. My shoulder was out of place for 2 years. I had avoided all doctors by then because, you know, they would say things like, well, you can't have done that just by getting out of a car, or it's just not possible, or we all get aches and pains at this age. So, you know, I just didn't believe I'd get any support. Unfortunately, I did the wrong thing, so don't follow me, don't follow my footsteps, is I tried to numb the pain after work with alcohol. That is not a good idea. It doesn't work. And eventually someone suggested that I trusted to go to hospital, where they put it back in. But I did a lot of autism conferences, professional ones, and they would always ask, do we have an autistic speaker? And I would put up my hand, me. And you know, I believe I am one. I'm an autistic parent, background, so on. I was told no because I don't have blue hair. I have nothing against people with blue, green, orange, any coloured hair, or even no hair. I just want equality. Or don't stereotype because you don't look whatever the look is meant to be. I'm a middle-aged person. And oh, the other thing was, I didn't like data enough. I don't mind data. It's just not passion. Some people have it, I don't. So these passions can be overwhelming and really enjoyable. Sometimes they're not so enjoyable, but they're still a passion. They used to be called obsessions. Mine are social mobility, equality, diversity, co-production, and human rights. In 2015, because of not being believed and being injured, I had to retire. And only then I finally got my eldest diagnosis. And I had a name instead of being bendy. And then I was immediately discharged, and I was so ill. For 2 years I couldn't partake in the world, basically. I bought a book on eldest because, like a lot of people, I couldn't even say the name, and I gave it to my practitioners because they didn't know about it, and it cost me money and I wasn't earning any, so there were a lot of challenges there, and I kept saying, have you read this pen? So the other thing about the diagnosis I've got is it keeps changing every time I see someone. I don't worry about it too much at the moment because I know things now. But yeah, it was really, really hard. And it was really hard being a carer as well when you don't know where you are. After about 9 months of that sort of illness, injury, you can pick up a bit and then you get another flare. But then I got really, 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 really ill to do with all different things, and there was no answer. I kept asking what is happening and they didn't know. But there's nothing scary. Well, there probably is, but it's really scary when you can't eat for a considerable amount of time, for months, and you can't breathe well, and you get all sorts of skin things going on, like I won't go into it now, but they're very, very odd things, like crawling ants. It's called parathesis fornication or something like that. The most scary thing was my children were worried and they asked me if I was dying, and I didn't know what to say. And I asked myself, am I dying? I don't know what's happening. Too many times I've been medically dismissed because these are unexplained symptoms, and some of the advice given actually made it my situation much more damaging for me, and basically I lost my career, so I wasn't happy about that. And one thing that comes through quite a lot is that it's all in my head. I'm imagining it or making it up or hypervigilance on it. In 2016, I had my autism diagnosis. I went out of county because I didn't want people to know who I was and make a decision on that. I wanted it to be authentic. I wanted it to be, I didn't want to lie because I knew exactly what to say and how to say it. And I didn't want that at all. However, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't got the diagnosis, I have to say. And once I was there, it was absolutely fine, except they didn't believe I was anxious. And so I had to explain that I am a trained teacher. I'm used to speaking, and that's what I do. Well, I can be in a wheelchair, I can be on crutches and so on. And it's this invisible, visible disability sort of scenario that is very difficult to understand, I suppose, for the public, for friends, definitely for family, and practitioners, and for ourselves. But it would be nice to have some belief about it, because we don't ask for this. And so many times I was accused of it all being in my head, and I felt obviously an imposter in many situations. So it's been a really difficult few years getting that where am I, who am I sort of thing going on, because you've been disbelieved for so long. I trained in anxiety. We designed training in it all the time, and also for autism, dyspraxia was always mentioned, the 6 senses. And interesting that last year a lovely lady asked me to do a talk on autism to parents, particularly of girls, and I did it on the interoception and the senses and the health issues. Be there's a physical reason, they're actually in pain, and you know they were in tears, not just of understanding, and we're really, really grateful, and this is where we need to go. I believe there's spectrum bias in autism, in health, education, social care, and all sorts actually. The visible, invisible disability, they often probably only see one end of the spectrum by the time they get to them. The same with health issues. We try and avoid it so much because of disbelief. So I believe it's gender biased, I believe it's age biased, and presentation, as in professional. So maybe a way forward is unconscious bias training, just putting it out there. So as autism is a spectrum and we all present differently, so does eldest and loss. We have all different symptoms, and that's really complex for us, and I suppose for everybody else, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't learn about it. It's just we need to know more why. I like to deep dive, but don't follow my footsteps.